Well, good morning, everyone. Here in El Paso, we're in the midst of a triple-digit heat wave, and summer has only begun. So we know there's more of that coming. I hope wherever you are, it's pleasant or at least bearable. Today I want to talk about being impressed. That is, what impresses God and what should impress us. In Mark 13:1, we see what one of the disciples was impressed by. As he was going out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Teacher, look! What massive stones! What impressive buildings!" Now we already know that Jesus is not impressed by earthly things, and sure enough, his response in verse 2 confirms that. Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." Now Jesus here was predicting what happened in AD 70 when the Roman army destroyed the temple. But in the general sense, all earthly things are temporal. Remember the Titanic? It was said to be unsinkable, and we all know what happened to it. Do you remember your first car? If you're too young for that, ask your parents or your grandparents about their first car, and ask them, where is it now? Chances are, it's in a scrapyard, or has already been melted down to make something else. It's the same with buildings. The Plaza Hotel was a show place when it opened in 1930, but after years of neglect, it took Paul Foster close to $80 million and 12 years to get it open again. The things of this world wear out, they lose their luster, they break down, they become nothing more than junk. As it says in 2 Peter 3:10, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise. The elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up." So we see God's not impressed with worldly things, and neither should we. And the reason for that is the thing that impresses you is the clearest indication of the direction you're taking in life. So then what is it that impresses God, if indeed anything can? Well, let's look at Mark 12:41 to 44. Sitting across from the temple treasury, he watched the crowd, he being Jesus, that is, watched the crowd dropping money into the treasury. Many rich people were putting in large sums. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 tiny coins worth very little. Summoning his disciples, he said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. For they gave out of their surplus, but she gave out of her poverty all that she had, all she had to live on." Jesus wasn't impressed by the large sums of money the rich people were putting into the temple treasury. And to be perfectly honest, he wasn't impressed with the amount that the widow contributed. He was impressed by the heart behind the gift. While the rich people gave from their surplus, she gave everything. You know, too many people never reach the point of understanding this lesson. If something doesn't cost you anything, then it's not worth anything. Okay, sorry, back to the question. What impresses God? Well, another illustration is a parable Jesus told in Luke 18:10 through 14. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee was standing and praying like this about himself: "God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, greedy, unrighteous, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of everything I get." But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but kept striking his chest and saying, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." I tell you, this one went down to his house justified rather than the other, because everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Here again we see Jesus getting to the heart behind the action. The Pharisee was doing all the right things, but it was from a heart of selfish ambition, a self-serving attitude. He wasn't doing it to please God. He was doing it so he could brag about it and lord it over his fellow man. And he was blind to his own heart. The tax collector, on the other hand, was keenly aware of his heart. He knew he was a sinner in need of salvation. Remember the Sermon on the Mount? It begins with what we call the Beatitudes. That comes from the first word of each verse in the Latin, beati. Now this word means blessed, rich, happy. Wuest, in his expanded translation, renders it spiritually prosperous. The Amplified translation says blessed, that is, happy, to be envied, spiritually prosperous, with life joy and satisfaction in God's favor and salvation, regardless of their outward conditions. So from Matthew 5, beginning in verse 3, and this is the New English Bible translation. How blessed are those who know their need of God. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. How blessed are the sorrowful. They shall find consolation. How blessed are those of a gentle spirit. They shall have the earth as their possession. How blessed are those who hunger and thirst to see right prevail. They shall be satisfied. How blessed are those who show mercy. Mercy shall be shown to them. How blessed are those whose hearts are pure. They shall see God. How blessed are the peacemakers. God shall call them his sons. How blessed are those who have suffered persecution for the cause of right. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. So here we see 8 things that impress God. Being poor in spirit, that is knowing our need for God. Mourning, being sorrowful, and the implication is mourning for the things of God. Being humble, having a gentle spirit. Hungering and thirsting for righteousness to prevail. That means standing against all unrighteousness, no matter where it occurs. Being merciful to others, just as God is merciful to us. Having a pure heart, which means staying fessed up with God and others. Being a peacemaker, and notice it's peacemaker, not peacekeeper. Making anything takes a lot of work. Suffering persecution for righteousness' sake, not because we've done something wrong and deserve it. These are the things that impress God. Our hearts, our attitudes, not what we do for him or others, not how much money we contribute, nothing from a fleshly, physical motive. So go forth today, and don't worry about impressing people. Do the things that impress your God and Savior. Have a great day. Thank you.